Hello everyone, my name is tobyhorrorboy, and today we're going to be making a Tattletail. Wait, don't go. This isn't actually the Furby we'll be using. I'm doing a bit. Ooh, but what about the 2012 Furby? His eyes are LCD screens, so he's not ideal. Perhaps Little Gizmo? No, I'd never do anything to hurt this lovely boy. Ah, but Skunk, Generation 1, 1998. That is a great year. That's when my partner was born. As always, the first thing we have to do is skin him. The Furby, not my partner. Some people aren't gonna like this, but you have to crack some eggs to make an omelet, and you have to skin a Furby to customize a Furby. And this is genuinely the easiest animatronic that I've had the pleasure to skin on video for you all. Most people aren't going around skinning animatronics because they don't know what's good, but Furby customization is very much an established hobby. Normally I have to go very slowly so I don't cut any rogue wires or break something, but I actually had a tutorial for this one. My Reading is Odd has a fantastic video on how to skin a Furby that I found really helpful. To walk you through it, you first cut the stitch holding the ears to their plastic frame and pull the ear fabric off. There's a zip tie holding his fur on at the center back of his body towards the base. We cut that too and roll his fur up to reveal the screws for his faceplate. Then we unscrew them and he's almost free. There's a little bit of glue there, so we gently pull the fur until it comes off. That's it. How easy was that? So quick and easy that he didn't even get his own skinning video. For anyone who doesn't know, this is what we're making. This is a baby talking Tattletail from the 2016 game Tattletail, and I think it's safe to say that this is my most requested character ever. I've had people asking me to make him since day one, and I couldn't because he's very clearly based on a Furby, and I didn't have one of those. But then time passed, and now I have multiple, so here we are. Before we get started on this properly, I do want to get some of that glue and fur gunk off his head. And we can do that with just a little bit of eucalyptus oil. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I wanted a mostly clean surface to start with. We're also going to chuck some tape over any Furby interior access points because we don't want plastic dust getting in his speaker or anywhere inside of him. They might look pretty close at first glance, but a Tattletail and a Furby are significantly different shapes. Thankfully, we need to add to our Furby, not take any of his pre-existing body away. Paint and glue don't like to stick to smooth plastic, so we need to rough up our surfaces to give them some tooth. We're gonna sand down everything except for his eyes because we're keeping those as they are. You can buy eye chips that might be a bit more accurate, and I could try to make some. But this is my first craft project of the year, and I started it in late July, so we need to get a move on if we're ever gonna get to that Dread Ducky and My Little Amnesia Fluttershy. Also, I think that the Furby eyes are very charming. They're perfect to me. Anything that's gonna be covered in fur later gets sanded with the rotary tool because it's quicker and easier, while his eyelids and beak get sanded with a sanding stick, which is just sandpaper on a stick. I love to have tools. His tongue was a very different texture to his beak and eyelids, and sanding it just sort of took some of the sealer off without actually doing much. We used the eucalyptus oil to remove the top layers of his tongue paint, and then go back in with our sandpaper to finish it off. Now we can start to change his shape. We're gonna glue down pieces of EVA foam floor mats to his body to bulk him out, and then sand him into the right shape. The floor mats are versatile, cheap, lightweight, and I've got so many of them. We pattern his side pieces, making sure to leave a hole for his speaker, and glue them on with contact cement. Contact cement is my favorite adhesive and my very best friend. You do a layer on both surfaces, wait for them to become mostly touch dry, and then stick them together. And you have to get it right the first time, because if you mess up, it's not coming off. The back piece is a bit odd, so we're gonna make a pattern using cling film and tape. We put the cling film over him and cover it in clear tape before tracing out the shape we need. I personally find that this works best if you have a marker that actually has ink in it, and if you're not on intense cold and flu medication. I may have had to do a few small revisions to the pattern. Now, that white plastic on the Furby's back is a button. It's how you give him a little pat. We're gonna build that up with a separate foam piece so that it's still functional, but we'll be doing that after the base of his body is otherwise done. We make another cling film pattern for the front of his body and glue that bit on, and then add another layer of foam to his sides. This is an absolutely horrific life stage for him. Look at that. We sand him down with the rotary tool to start getting almost kind of a little bit the right shape. This is really just rounding him out and blending the layers together. Nowhere close to what he's supposed to look like. He's just not fat enough, but it's nothing that some more foam can't fix. More specifically, I realized that the top of his head was going to need to be taller and that we were going to need to cover the base of where his ears are currently. Conserving the original movement of the animatronic wherever possible is really important to me because I want him to be able to move. Our Tattletail's ears need to be able to wiggle. It's absolutely crucial. To do that, we'll be extending his ear bones, cartilage later, but for now, we can go ahead and add more foam. And when he's kind of the right shape from the front, we can stop and realize that we've created the legendary Tattletail. In my defense, I was incredibly sick during the early stages of this project and realistically shouldn't have been crafting, but I couldn't be stopped. I was the kind of sick where I had to take Sudafed for the first time and had absolutely ascended minutes before coming out to my craft room. Such hits include me almost falling over backwards with no warning while standing still, as well as, hey, did the power go out? Or did I just blink for a really long time? It says that you can't operate heavy machinery while taking Sudafed, but my rotary tool is very lightweight. Chat, do as I say, not as I do. Don't use craft knives and power tools while on cold and flu medicine. I'm serious. The wonderful thing about projects like this is that it's gonna be covered in fur, which will hide the bright yellow craft foam we patched him up with to improve his shape. Truly, my process is just sanding and gluing more foam on until the proportions are right and both sides look the same. I guess the most notable change I had to make here was to the bottom few centimeters of him. I don't know why, but I thought that he had a little straight bit under his egg shape that the feet attach to. He doesn't. I'm blaming the Sudafed. He just looked off, and I couldn't figure out why until I did. But we can fix that no problem with a big strip of foam. Please enjoy the growing pile of foam dust on the table. Microplastics, anyone? If you've seen my videos before, you might notice that I'm not wearing my beautiful nitrile gloves. The box hadn't quite made it out to my craft room yet, and I could not for the life of me find them, so I used these mediocre, cheapy ones. Apparently mine were hiding, and I quote my partner here, under the dual discs. So we found them quickly, but I didn't want to waste these ones, so I kept using them until they were decently shredded. But at last, we've added and sanded away enough foam that he's finally got that good egg shape. If he had a doctorate, he could be Dr. Eggman. Dr. Egg Furby. Oh, we have to send him to medical school immediately. We're also gonna glue in a cover for the sensor on his back and sand it down to blend it into the rest of him. The fur we'll be adding later will have no problem hiding that gap. And at this point, our Furby has been through a lot. He has a lot more coming, but all that sanding could have been a bit much for the little guy. Even back in the 90s when these came out, they were kind of temperamental. The manual even had a guide on what to do if your Furby was behaving strangely. I haven't customized a Furby before, so I just wanted to check in and make sure that he was still functional. And he is. I had to soft reset him a few times and shake him, but he does still work. He's okay. We're good to keep going. The next thing we're gonna make are his little feet, and we can start by cutting the core of them out of EVA foam. Each foot is gonna be 2 circles and a rectangle with rounded edges. My deep dark secret is that if a foam piece isn't gonna be visible in any capacity, I just cut it with scissors. It's fine if it's a bit messy. You truly won't be able to tell by the end. Then we're gonna glue our pieces together with contact cement. The circles are his ankles and the rectangles are the actual feet. We're also going to smooth down the edges to give us a cleaner base to start with, because we're going to be sculpting, and that's something that I unfortunately haven't done a lot of, so I need all the help I can get. Obsessed with the way that I apparently didn't turn my desk light on for this section, so it's just natural light and weird shadows. Now, the base of a Furby is just the bottom of its torso, if you can call it that, with its little plush Furby feet sticking out in front. But the bottom of a Tattletail is its feet that it stands on. The torso section doesn't make contact with the ground. I realized pretty quickly that if our Tattletail was going to stay upright despite his sick dance moves, we were going to need to make his feet heavier. If you watched my Freddle video, you already know what's coming. It's the fishing sinkers again. We used them to counterweight the Freddle's lower back so that he'd be able to balance properly, and now they're going to keep our Tattletail upright as well. We start by carving out a hole for them to sit in, inside the ankles. And we sand that hole bit by bit until it's exactly the right size to hold 2 fishing sinkers. I don't want them rattling around in there, but we don't want to carve out so much that it interferes with the structural integrity of his ankles. Only one of us is going to have hypermobility ankle issues, and it's not going to be our our Tattletail. Once the ankle holds are good to go, we're gonna put the weights aside and grab our foam clay. So this is from Lumen's workshop. I'm not sponsored, I just love using it. Basically, you sculpt it like clay and it dries into a lightweight foam. Truly the best of both worlds. I used to cosplay Homestuck, so I've used many types of clay to make horns over the years, and Lumen's foam clay is hands down the best I've used. We're gonna put down a layer of foam clay on both feet and use a sculpting tool to give him some defined toes. To be honest, when I was closely looking at reference images for the Tattletail, I was overcome with disgust for his feet. Furby feet are these cute little plush paws. But something about the Tattletail feet really bothered me. I think it's a combination of them having visible ankles and how shiny they are. Once I noticed it, it was just really upsetting to look at. I just really hated it. Terrible stuff. But I have to say, once ours were mostly sculpted, I did change my mind a bit. They're just paw-like enough to pass. Our Tattletail is quickly turning into one of the cutest things I've made. Putting the feet aside for now, we're also going to work on the other foam clay piece, his mouth. A Furby has a flat beak that closes completely, but a Tattletail has a kind of anime cat mouth. He's like, nya. So we need to sand the middle of his upper beak down so we can create that shape. Foam clay loves to stick to itself, which is fantastic, but in this instance it means that we're going to be doing his upper and lower mouth very much separately so they don't get stuck together. You can use just a drop of water to help smooth the clay out and make it easier to work with. Foam clay takes a good 48 hours to dry, and I personally like to do multiple passes of it to get it as smooth as possible. So we do this first pass and let it dry for 2 days without messing with it. Then we sand it, add more clay, wait for it to dry, sand it again, add more clay, until we're happy with the shape and it's not the saddest, bumpiest thing in the world. And because I do multiple passes, it doesn't have to be flawless or totally the right shape on the first try. So, including drying time, the feet and mouth took quite a while. I'm not gonna make you sit through all the footage for that, you get the idea. Everyone that does sculpting videos has these silicone tools, and mine are metal. The ones I have are perfectly functional, but I can't help but feel as if I'm missing out, and I'm not normally a person that wants something just because someone else has it. Anyway, if you see me with silicone sculpting tools in the near future, you'll know that I've snapped. They're like $10 for a set. What if I bought myself a little treat? So the mouth area is going to be our first real divergence from the canon design. A Tattletail doesn't have a visible tongue, it's just a fleshy maw. But we are absolutely going to be keeping our Tattletail with his original tongue because it's a button. We can't feed him if we can't activate his tongue sensor, so for the sake of not completely losing that feature, he's going to have a fleshy tongue inside of his fleshy mouth. It'll visibly be a separate piece from his lower mouth, but that's fine. The finishing touch for our sculpting is his adorable little heart nose. I made this mostly the right shape and then pressed it into place. You can't tell from this footage, but you have no idea how hard this was for me. I made 2 or 3 little cat head shapes before I made something resembling a heart. Customizing a Furby to look like a Tattletail? Not that hard. Making a symmetrical heart out of clay? Borderline impossible. Save yourself while you still can. But it's okay. Nothing that a bit of prodding and wiggling can't fix. Okay, final sanding and touch-ups, and he's presentable. I'd added extra clay to the top of the ankles, so we cut that off with a pair of scissors and make sure that they're the same height. Then we can cut 2 circles from craft foam to be the tops of his ankles. We put the fishing sinkers in and glue the tops on with contact cement to entomb them in his paws forever. Just while we're waiting for the contact cement to become touch dry, I was moving my JoJo shelf around the other day and my poor boy's glue finally gave out and he came apart. So of course we need to fix up poor Hierophant as well. Okay, we sand down the ankle tops to blend into the rest of him. To get the foam clay sections ready for painting, we can apply 3 to 4 coats of watered down Mod Podge, letting it completely dry between coats. And while foam is happening to us, we should probably get the last foam piece done too. I'm gonna call this his faceplate, but it's his whole tummy area as well. I patterned it so carefully, the area around his face has to be exact. If it's too small, it'll stop his eyes and mouth from moving, and if it's too big, it'll show the foam and plastic amalgamation that is his body. We trace it onto 2mm high density foam and cut it out with a craft knife. I got this knife earlier this year, and I hadn't had a chance to use it until now. It's a cheap one, but it comes with a bunch of interchangeable blades, and I really like it. The Tattletail doesn't have any kind of gap around his eyes and mouth. It looks like the material there stretches when he moves. which points to it being made of latex, like the 2005 Furby. Speaking of which, I've had so many people telling me that I should have used a 2005 Furby instead of a 1998 Furby, and it's a great idea, but I eat my cereal with home brand long life milk. I'm not dropping $200+ on a Furby that I'm still gonna have to add foam to and totally reshape and reskin. Love the enthusiasm, but I am a sad little pension boy. We're making what we can with what we've got. Let's do our best. I did test out some liquid latex to see if I could use that to bridge the gap between his mouth and tummy, but I didn't like how it looked, and also I'm allergic to it. We sand down the edges of the faceplate to neaten it all up and add some slight beveling to the edges. Now we can use the heat gun, and that's to both heat seal it to help it take paint better, and heat form it to his body so that it fits nice and snug on him. We can take this opportunity to mark out where his faceplate is gonna sit, which will help us shortly. Finally, we can do 3 to 4 coats of watered down Mod Podge to get it ready for painting and put the faceplate aside for now. Let's jump over to have a look at his fur, and his fur is stinky, and stinky fur goes in the conditioner soup. Have a little ASMR for your troubles. Okay, that took several days to dry while hanging directly over the ducted heating, but now that it's dry, we can actually use it. I'm no stranger to buying fur both online and in person, and I've never bought fur with such a strong chemically smell. None of my regular fur places had anything in the right color, and I will do just about anything to avoid dyeing fur again after the incident, and looking online, shipping ranged from about $50 to $130 alone, and I'm not paying that much for one Furby's worth of fur, which is our new standard measurement. So this is from eBay. It was like $6 total, and it's not particularly nice fur. I wouldn't recommend it, but a Tattletail having kind of bleh fur is par for the course, so I think it worked out well. Anyway, we give it a little soak in conditioner and warm water. And now, instead of every chemical on earth, it kind of smells like me because I used my conditioner. To further prepare it, we're going to brush it using a slicker brush. And then, brush it up the wrong way, which will help it look fuller and fluffier. I want him to be fat and round, like a baby seal. Okay, we're gonna make a pattern for his body out of cling film and tape. When I'm making patterns using this method, I prefer just making half of the pattern and mirroring it if it's symmetrical. This is likely at least a bit because most of the things I make are quite small in scale, and I enjoy scribbling all over the pattern. And the body will be symmetrical. It's only going to be 2 pieces, and the left and right side of him are the same. We trace around the outside of his faceplate and mark where his ear holes will need to sit. And CB does stand for center back and not circus baby, which is what I think of every time I write it. Maybe one day I'll make a circus baby animatronic and it can be both. We cut the pattern off him and then cut around the edges. As you can see, it doesn't sit even remotely flat, so we'll need to add a dart. Because there's something deeply wrong with me, I just eyeball where that's going to be and make the cut, extending it until it sits flat. We have basically no margin of error here. We don't have even a centimeter of fur to spare, so we have to get it bang on the first time. So, we've traced the cling film pattern onto paper and added a seam allowance, and we're going to trace that onto our fur with a permanent marker. Not 1 centimeter to spare. I'm just okay at a lot of things, but you know what? I'm pretty damn good at estimating how much fabric I'll need for something. We cut our pieces out with our craft knife, including the slits for his ears. The cut edges of fur love to shed, so we brush those out in a futile attempt to contain it to just my craft room. And while we're cutting out fur, we can cut out his ears. I patterned these based off of Furby's ears and just extended them and slightly tweaked the shape. I always check my fabric stash before buying any more, and I had this lilac minky that I think will complement the fur really nicely. In the game, his inner ear color changes a lot with the lighting, but I think the lilac looks good. It should probably be a smidge pinker, but it's nice. I like it. Now we're gonna pin the front and back pieces together, right sides together, and making sure that the fur is tucked away. We use a straight stitch on the sewing machine, reinforcing the tips of the ears because I have a lot of worries. We're also gonna machine sew up both darts and the center back seam of his body. We can turn our pieces the right way out, using a pen to point the ears. Now we can use a sewing pin to free the fur that's trapped in the seam. I always do this. It's a really important step because otherwise the seam is going to be super visible and it just helps it look a lot more polished. Now, I have this wonderful thing that I call comment furries. Whenever I post anything fur related, my comment furries will come running with tips and tricks, and it's genuinely wonderful and I'm very fond of them. And a couple of my comment furries suggested using a slicker brush to get the fur out of the seams. I didn't do that with the ears because of the minky, and I also wouldn't do that with fleece, but they're right, it works really well with fur. Thank you, comment furries. I love you, comment furries. And also everyone else who comments or watches my videos, even if you're not a furry. Okay, we're gonna have a little try on of his skin just to see what we're working with. And he looks maybe a bit silly and like everything is just sitting on him and isn't actually attached yet. But it fits, and that's all we need for right now. His eyelids are looking a little plain. Let's give him some beautiful eyeshadow. We're using a pearlescent paint, so it has a little bit of shimmer to it. I bought this for an Eridan Ampora cosplay back in 2013 and haven't used it since, so this was oddly cathartic for me. Tattletail's blue eyelids always make me think of my high school English teacher. She wore blue eyeliner every day, and we were best buds because we both love detective fiction. Everyone please take a moment to look at the awesome lighter my incredibly beautiful and handsome and amazing boy girlfriend who I love got me. It has Vinegar Doppio engraved on it, and he's probably my favorite fictional character of all time. There is a fantastic tutorial for removing Furby eye chips by Furby Purrs on Tumblr. First, you heat up a hot glue stick and stick it to the Furby's eye until it cools. I made a terrible mistake and forgot to take the batteries out. He was just sitting there so peacefully, so I just forgot that they were still in there. He was having a bit of a wiggle and yelling. I'm trying to hold the hot glue stick in place and my guy isn't under anesthetic. This might be the worst situation I've ever been in. I'm what we in the industry call a fool. I took the batteries out for the second eye, don't worry about that. Next, we put him in the freezer for half an hour to an hour. He deserves to eat the rest of my ice cream after what I've done to him. And then you can take him out and pull the glue sticks straight off and the eye chips will come off with them. If that doesn't work, you're supposed to try again. But I was trying to hurry things along, so I did the old stick him in the eye with a knife trick. I wouldn't recommend it. You can chip his eye plastic doing this, but time was of the essence and I was very careful. We do a coat of gloss Mod Podge on his eyelids for that bit of extra shine, and now we can paint the rest of him. Basically, we paint his paws, mouth, faceplate, and any part of the face that's going to be visible past the faceplate, and it needs a solid 3 coats. I have a lot of footage of this, so I'm going to take this opportunity to get my yapping done for this video. I said earlier that sticking a Furby in the eye with a hot glue stick while it was on and sentient was the worst thing to ever happen to me. And I'm sticking by that, but my partner and I did get hit by a car at around this point in the project. Thankfully, everyone was okay. We all walked away from it and there were no major injuries. I had whiplash and was extra sore, but it's all okay, everyone's fine. We were in the car and had stopped at the lights, and the guy behind us just kept on going. So our car got written off, and there was a little bit there where we didn't have a car, and we had to go and inspect a bunch of cars to figure out which one we wanted to buy. It was just stressful and awful, but at least everyone's okay. And Rira and Jessie both co-feed me money for tear-flavored sushi, and I'm putting that towards my little amnesia Fluttershy. And also I bought some sushi. Thank you both so much. I cannot express how much that means to me. I'm saying thank you in this video and also the Amnesia Shy video when it's time for that. I have a bit of a hard time grappling with the fact that people actually watch and enjoy my videos, let alone that I'd be sent Kofi sushi money for sushi and fabric after a car accident. 2025 kinda crazy. Thank you guys. Anyway, that's my life update. Not having a car when you normally have a car is bad. Back to the task at hand, we can paint on his little pink nose, which I think is just adorable. I'm so fond of our Tattletail, I will protect him with my life. So he needs to have this little band around the top of his feet, and I was genuinely considering making this out of minky, which is a soft fabric. And that's an absolutely horrendous thought, because it's so small and it would be a nuisance to sew and you wouldn't even really be able to see it. A detail so insignificant and on the underside of him that I could just not do it, and I'm sure that 95% of everyone that saw him wouldn't even notice. But I am gonna do it, because I'm not a coward. Let's go. I'm going to be practicing self-care and painting it on, which I think is also a fine way to go about it. So, we put down 2 layers of blue paint. I've masked off the area we want painted with washi tape because I managed to use all of my masking tape while moving house. And once that's dry, we can paint on the pink stripes. I just freehanded this? How stressful. Peeling that tape off, it's surprisingly clean. Much better than I'd anticipated. We're gonna take that flesh paint and touch up anywhere that needs it. Sorry, I know that my hair is constantly getting in the way of the camera, but I'm short-sighted and need to have my face directly over whatever I'm painting or I can't see it. A sacrifice we have to make in order for the paint to end up in the right spot. Once everything is dry, we can do 2 coats of watered-down gloss Mod Podge. And this is to both seal the paint in and make him nice and glossy. I never get to use the gloss. It's always matte Mod Podge because I'm always making Five Nights at Withered Rusty Hellscape animatronics. So this is a real highlight for me personally. A fair chunk of Tattletail is meant to be hard plastic, and the gloss will make our foam look more like shiny plastic. While we've got our paint out, we do need to fix up the underside of the Furby. You can't see what the underside of a Tattletail looks like, so I opted for black because all 3 of my Gen 1 Furbies have black undersides. It's just like the stone said, I see a sanded kind of grey Furby underside and I want to paint it black. No unsealed paint or plastic here, so I'll do a coat of Mod Podge too. Sorry about that, won't happen again. That wasn't even slightly the right tune. As an apology for what happened to your ears just now, we're gonna shave down our Tattletail's ears and give him some more ear bones. Furbies have fleece ears, but I didn't like my chances of finding a fleece that perfectly matches this very specific shade of purple fur, so I've opted to just use the fur that we've got. To make them less egregiously fluffy, we're gonna shave them down with an electric shaver. I had a shaver specifically for fur, but it stopped working, so my wonderful housemate Spencer said that I could use this spare that he had. And it did work for this, but I think it was struggling to get through the fur, so a trip to Kmart is definitely in order before I work with fur again. Anyway, thank you, Spenny. That looks so much better than it would have if I'd just gone at it with a pair of scissors. Now, about elongating his ear bones. We're gonna use some hard, thin plastic. This is the bottom insert from a reusable shopping bag. We cut those into rounded extensions and sand down the ear bones to help the adhesive adhere better. Then we can glue them on. If you watch my videos regularly, I want you to remember the plastic bag insert we're using here because it's gonna show up again in a few videos' time. I've always said, when life gives you an intact Furby skin, you have to make a fun accessory out of it. A Tattletail has much longer ears than a Furby, and we lost some of the original ear bone height when we reshaped his body. So this is to ensure that the ears have enough structure to hold them up and move them around. One thing I found about animatronic ears is that they're always last, and when they're not last, they're second last. So let's jump away from his ears and back to his face. I held his faceplate up to him and realized that you could see some of the ugly foam and plastic amalgamation around his face. It looked hideous and I hated it, so we're gonna fix that before we go any further. We take tiny amounts of foam clay and smooth it out around the outside of his face. It's important not to get anything too close to the plastic shell there because we don't want to disrupt the shape of it. And we add a couple of drops of water to help smooth it out. When that's dry, we can sand it down. We do another layer to make sure that everything's covered and sand it once it's dry. Riveting stuff, I know. Now we can do 3 to 4 coats of watered down Mod Podge and paint it to match the rest of his skin. Finally, we can add a top coat of gloss Mod Podge and he's back to being a respectable gentleman with no ugly foam showing. Now, ideally, I would have done this next step immediately after skinning him, but I didn't because I was too caught up in wanting to get started. You may have noticed that the whites of his eyes are quite yellow. That's just a normal thing that happens to plastic over time, especially when it's exposed to sunlight. But in the game, you get your Tattletail new for Christmas, and there's no reason as to why his eyes would be yellow. Thankfully, you can lighten plastic by covering it in hydrogen peroxide and leaving it out in the sun. Ideally, you'd submerge his eyes in it, but I couldn't do that because we've already made him fat and I can't get to his body screws to undo his casing. So I just kind of painted it on and reapplied it every couple of hours, which kind of worked. Better than it should have, considering that this hydrogen peroxide is 20 years old and expired in 2008. The advice at the time was to spray it onto a new piercing to keep it clean. Don't do that, awful idea. And we're just gonna drill some holes at the top of his ear bones. It's possible that I'm not very good at making cohesive voiceovers for my videos, but I've improved and that's what matters. And what if I told you that it was time to start attaching everything? To give us a cleaner surface to work with, we're gonna trim the fur about 1 to 2 centimeters from his underside. The less long fur getting in the glue, the better. Then we can put his fur on and trim down the excess at the center front before pinning everything into place. I might have mentioned this in a previous video, but the pins in the head section of my spider pin holder are glue pins. So they're bent or already covered in glue. I can't use them for regular sewing, but they're great for things like this because they're already damaged. We're gonna start attaching his body fur by hand sewing up that tiny center front seam. We're using a ladder stitch because we're always using a ladder stitch. We want to make sure that it's sitting flush to his body with no pulling or excess fabric, and we pick the fur out of the seam because of the love. Next up, we want to secure his ears. We hand sew up the bottom seam, leaving a small gap at the inner side and slide his ear cover on. So this is a bit finicky. You fold it over itself and then secure it by hand sewing the ear, using the hole in the tip of the ear bone as an anchoring point. Really, this was me just squishing his ears, trying to figure out where the hole we drilled was. Not particularly difficult, just a lot of squishing. And we do that to both ears to make sure they're symmetrical. Finally, we can sew the outer bottom corner of the ears to his body, making sure that the ears are curved slightly to mimic a real Furby. And he can have a little brush as a treat. With those in place, we're gonna glue down the fur around his face. You can't see it here, but we previously marked where that needs to come to so that everything's covered, and I was looking at those markings while doing this. It's important to go section by section and to not rush, because you don't want your fur sliding out of place and ending up glued just off where it's supposed to be. The glue pins come into play once again. We can put his faceplate into position and mark where the outline sits with pins. We carefully trim down any excess fur, making sure not to cut anything that's supposed to stick out past his faceplate. We remove our pins and brush his fur straight out away from the middle of him. Now we take our Tarzan's grip glue and apply a thin coat to his faceplate. And we can attach his faceplate so slowly and so carefully. Maybe I needed to reposition some of the fluff at the very top, and that's okay. He's starting to come together now. That's recognizably a Tattletail. But we're not done yet. Starting from the center front and bit by bit working our way towards the back, we're gonna take our glue and glue down the bottom edge. So this bear is me. He wasn't me at first, but I got attached and now I am him and he is me. Our Tattletail has a little pink hair tuft and tail, and I just couldn't leg it to a fabric store to buy such a tiny amount of fur, so I was on the lookout for a secondhand plushie or blanket or just any little scrap I could use, and this is what I found. I've never skinned a Beanie Kid before, but here we are. We start by decapitating him and pulling out his bag of beans, his bean bag. Did you know that Beanie Kids only have stuffing in the head and lower legs? Now you do. We cut his seams as close to the edge as we can get away with, so we have the front and back pieces of his body minus his arms. It turns out that this is the exact amount of fabric that we needed. We cut out 2 pieces for his tail using the front and back of his torso. Then we pin our fabric right sides together and machine sew them up, leaving the base of the tail open. Then we can cut out his head tuft pieces from his thigh fabric. And the same thing, we pin the right sides together and sew it up, leaving the base open. A lot of people don't know this, but when you use polyfill or stuffing, you're supposed to fluff it up yourself. We're gonna use his leg stuffing because it felt like the right thing to do. We stuff both pieces and run a pin along the seams to unpick the fur. Then we can pin them both into place. Now we can hand sew them on using a ladder stitch. I do wish that the fur was a bit longer, but I think it looks alright. When attaching pieces like this, I like to sew around it a second time to really secure it. Fantastic. Now, there's a little bit too much fabric covering his ear movement zone, and it's stopping them from moving as well as they should. To fix this, we carefully trim down some of the excess. We also use our Tarzan's grip glue to secure the fur to his body so you can't see any of the foam. Now we can ruin our lovely paint job. That was a bit dramatic, please excuse me. I've never gotten a good night's sleep in my life. So we use the rotary tool to sand where his feet are gonna go on the underside of his body and sand the tops of his feet so that they'll stick better. And we can glue his feet on with our contact cement. There was a lot of the Tarzan's grip this time around. I missed my favorite adhesive. We angle the feet just slightly outwards. I had to be pretty careful with the placement here, but I'm pleased to announce that he stands with no trouble at all. His dancing and wiggling won't knock him over, he's all good. Okay, this is the very last thing we have to do. His eyes are still soulless, if you can even call them that when they're totally empty. We are incredibly lucky that his texture map is on the Tattletail wiki, so I didn't have to go digging for it myself. Sorry, I couldn't figure out who uploaded it, but it was pulled from the game's files. Thank you Tattletail wiki for being so comprehensive. They even have the texture map for the box he comes in. Much to think about. Beautiful, gorgeous, stunning wiki. I love it. I don't own a printer, so I printed these at my mum's house. I've made quite a few badges before because I've made eater bags for characters with basically no merch. If you need to print something to be a specific size, you can make the paper on your screen the same size as an actual piece of A4 paper and then use a ruler or a template or whatever. Furby eye chips are 14 millimeters, so the eye image also has to be 14 millimeters. Yes, I did think that I was gonna mess up each eye 5 times. Why do you ask? We cut out both eyes and apply a thin coat of Mod Podge to the back of our glass cabochon. Then we can just stick the paper eye on because Mod Podge is basically PVA glue. While that's drying, we're going to tidy up his eyes a bit using some eucalyptus oil. When we removed his original eye chips, some of the paint stayed on his eyes. And I think that if I was a Furby, I'd be unhappy if I had paint chips stuck behind my new eyes. Only the best for our baby Tattletail. When the Mod Podge is dry, we can do a thin coat on the back of the paper and gently place them into his eyes. There, he's done. Thank you so much for watching. I'll show you what he looks like in a sec. I told you that I was the little pink bear. How do we feel about him? Next up is my little amnesia Fluttershy. She's gonna take up my whole desk, so I'm gonna have to figure something out for the tripod, but I'm beyond excited to get started on her. As always, if you've got any suggestions for things to make, do let me know. Thank you for watching. I love you. Okay, here's our baby talking Tattletail. I'll see you soon.